Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavati Tamastu Mavit Vishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So it's been a long time since we've all met. Welcome everybody back. And as we're looking at chapter 9, the yoga of the royal secret, royal knowledge and royal secret. So we got up to the second topic, verse 14. And the first topic being quite a tricky topic, verses 1 to 10. The self pervades the world. You see, our constant focus is on the world. So we find it tricky to actually, though we keep talking about the self, we find it tricky to actually comprehend there is a self. So because it's not a tangible aspect, it's like an X in an equation. We don't know what the X is. And in actual fact, because we don't know what this X is, we call it God. But that's not the truth. God's just a word. So we've got to use all the tools we have in the world, all the parts of the formula that we know, to go to that unknown factor, to get to that X. So the first verses 1 to 10 are helping us identify how and what is going on, where the Brahman is. In the topic, the self pervades the world. So it's really, well, if you have that inclination, really revisit those verses carefully and ask questions where you're not sure about it. From verses 11 to 19, the deluded disregard the self, and the wise glorify and seek the self. That's the second topic which we are on. But just to confirm from where we came from, in verse 5, he was saying, beings don't dwell in me. So it's almost like a confirmation that this whole world is an illusion. We're creating it, just like we create the world, the dream state when we are asleep. And we only see that is a dream when we wake up. So similarly, it's sort of saying that when the world folds back, which we can hardly comprehend, we see the Brahman. So we've got to unravel this, can't say mess, but unravel all our desires to actually go beyond that misapprehension to see that Brahman, because from that misapprehension of not seeing Brahman as Brahman, we've caused a non-apprehension, which is our world, which is what we get involved in, entangled in, and pursue with such importance. So in these verses which follow, he was saying that the wind and the space, it's beyond the wind and the space. Yet when we think of wind and space, it's like they're all pervading. It's like they're far beyond our thinking. But he's saying the Brahman is like the petrol in the car, if you remember that example. Who remembers the example of the Brahman is like the petrol in the car? Great. So we attribute goods and bads to God, this word, Brahman, whatever. But in actual fact, it's telling us it has nothing to do with what's the goods and bads are going on in this world. You can't attribute a good God, a bad God. We are solely responsible for that. So God's got nothing to do with it. So relinquishes the responsibility in this same course. And in 7, he says it's like the Brahma, it's like a cycle of birth and death we keep going through. So that's our cycle, but there's a cycle of Lord Brahma, which is far, far more intense and bigger in length of our years. But a day of Brahma is when this world is manifest, and a night is when it's all goes into dissolution. But the Brahman, the truth, is not bound by these cycles. It's a Sakshi. Who knows, who remembers this word Sakshi? What's Sakshi mean? Bhavita, what's a Sakshi? Good morning, Hari Om. You're on mute. Who else? What's a Sakshi? Nishi?
Witness.
Witness. So what does that mean? Anybody? What's it mean to be a witness?
An observer.
An observer. Of what? Good morning, everybody. Babita, of what?
Okay, Hari Om, everybody. So Sakshi is a witness. When you are seeing the situation, but not actually getting involved in that, you're just seeing it as it is.
Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? If you're seeing the situation just as it is, what does that mean for you, practically speaking?
So you're not affected by it.
Not affected by it. So the worst of situations, you observe it. You might feel the pain or emotion, but you're not affected by it. You move on it. Okay. So just if you forget all the words, hold on to the word Sakshi and keep trying to observe. This is where I got in a mess and fell down. How's daft? Just observe yourself. Okay, maybe we try again. Maybe we be a little bit more objective. What is our goal set? Where is our focus? What is our higher cause? What are we pursuing? Help yourself that way. So in 10, he says, Brahman is all responsible. A silent witness, Sakshi. So what it means is this Brahman is far beyond the perceptions, emotions, and thoughts that we have, beyond this misapprehension of the world. It's not that. Something beyond that. And we can use, if you remember last time, I don't know if anybody writes any notes, but we gave this example of the moon branch analogy. Does anybody remember that example? Chandrasekhanaya, it is in Sanskrit. Do you know what it's about? Anybody remember? Yeah. Do I have to tell you? Tim.
It's the way of advancing one's knowledge from what you know to what is a little bit beyond what you don't know. So it's just trying to extend from your position to a slightly stronger new position. And it plays with the moon at the end of a tip of a branch.
So you go from what you know the bark, you know the tree, you know the branch, you know the twig, that leads you in the sky to the moon, and you think, there it is. But the distance between that branch and the moon is far beyond what you've used to get there. So your job is to get to the end, and then it translates itself. Get to 100% sattva, then it trans-sattva. So you've got to evolve your sattva in this idea, moon branch analogy. So the self is beyond your world, the perceptions, emotions, and thoughts that we have. But we've got those to use. We've got that karma, bhakti, jnana, yogas to use to transform our personalities to get to that truth. The unfortunate part is, in the second topic, see, the self pervades the world in the first topic is mentioning, but in the second topic, 11 to 19, the deluded disregard the self and the wise glorify and seek the self. So who are the deluded? Who are the deluded people? Anybody? This is such a word.
I am.
And we all are deluded. Fools have the potential. So not understanding to identify with the self, because it's tricky, we don't know where it is, what it is. We are deluded and identify with our world and disregard truth. And one can hardly be blamed. So we pursue our actions, our knowledge in vain. We pursue knowledge of the world. We act in the world. We make those connections in the world and get stuck there. We have to act. We have to gain knowledge. But if it's not taking us to something beyond it, it's not subjective, it's always objective, it diminishes in its values. It's a very tricky thing. Our sense comes up as a thought, the perception of something we want, we like. This environment tantalizes us, and our senses get attached to that. And we get attached to it, and we gain it, and we fear we lose it. Then we get stressed and have that sorrow of it. So we're always busy trying to fight sorrow. So we keep pursuing the immediate joys, instant pleasures, to take us away from the sorrow, not realizing that we're just playing in the tree, in the moon branch analogy. We're not actually going to the tip to see beyond it, to see the moon. We're not actually looking for that bliss because we don't know what it is. So unless you back yourself with these type of values or knowledge, it's very difficult to conceive that there's anything beyond the world. You just have to see the hullabaloo of the news or whatever comes here and there, what's going on in the world, goods or bads, or people elated going to weddings or people killing each other. It's both the same, it's still worldly. You get caught up in it. That's, you're trying to remove yourself from one and creating another. But it's actually that person who focuses on truth without looking at the opinions of others, but takes that information, those values, reflects on it, Shravana, Manana, gets that truth. Otherwise it's vain, he puts it in the context in 12. But those Mahatmas meaning those sages, or ourselves, who focus on me, puts it, the truth, with Ananya Manasa. Does anybody remember this word? Anybody know the Sanskrit, Ananya Manasa? What does that mean? Anybody know? Verse 13. Ananya Manasa. What can it mean?
Well, Ananya means various. And manasa could be the man, your inside your heart, I don't know. Or manas is a human being, I don't know.
Manas is mind.
Yeah. Mind, yeah.
So Ananya, continuous and swerving mind. Ananya Chinta. With no other thoughts. It's continuous. It's like Sattatham. There's so many words to say the same thing, in fact. So a unswerving mind. The intellect's directing the mind. to attain that imperishable being. So unless you make the space in your environment to learn, to be quiet, to get out of that rajas, unless you move out of your environment, in fact, because it's difficult to evolve where there's so much noise and things going on in your head and that in relation to it. It's very difficult to evolve. All you can do in your evolution is you comment on the bad to make yourself good. It's limited. I mean, not completely, but that's one big facet of it. You're doing this, you're looking at the Bhagavad Gita, then you compare and think, oh, they're not looking at that, I'm looking at it, so great. But really to evolve, you've got to maneuver yourself out of this environment. Take the time. Holy days is actually when you take the time to reflect separate from your manic environment. So I suggest, as I've come back from the academy, I also went to Himalayas. So there's another Vedanta Academy experience that's for class members coming up in June, July. Please think about it. It's a brilliant environment to really focus your mind and really reflect, to get that consistency of purpose. So when you're in this environment, it's just a lot easier. In this environment, you're trying to focus your mind, get out this constant noise, your family, your work, your friends, some event, something goes wrong, something goes great, it's consumed. So, just a thought. Welcome back, everybody. So, it was suggested that we might read the beginning of the, self pervades the world, and then we continue on to verse 14. So Tim, if you would like to read.
Just before we do that, just a question about Sakshi. Witness, the word witness in English we often associate with the law, with the courtroom. But Sakshi, if I understood it right, it means we're not the accused, we're not the defendant, we're not the prosecutor, we're not the jury, we're not the judge, we're not even the witness in the court, we're just observing it, in case that's helpful.
So you've got to understand, you're observing your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. Your world, essentially. You're not in it. You're just observing. So you've got to pitch your mind on some thought there, which is not worldly in everything you do. You're good. Tim, if you'd like to read the self pervades the world, which is at the beginning of the chapter, which will just give us an overview of what we've been talking about.
Shall I read the introduction too?
Go ahead.
Chapter 9, the Yoga of Royal Knowledge and Royal Secret. Introduction. The 9th chapter, entitled The Yoga of Royal Knowledge and Royal Secret, contains 34 verses. It explains how the self, Atman, pervades the entire world. The wise seek the self, while the ignorant, disregarding the self, live a senseless life with vain hopes and aspirations. They go through the endless cycle of birth and death. Whatever one strives for, be it material or spiritual, one attains that particular goal. The ignorant gain limited, mundane ends, but never find fulfillment in their lives. Whereas the wise pursue the ultimate goal of realization and find absolute peace and bliss in their own self. Krishna therefore advises Arjuna and all mankind to seek the self, to ablate all worldly activities to the self until they reach spiritual enlightenment. Self pervades the world. covering verses 1 to 10. Krishna begins this chapter by offering to impart the knowledge of reality that pervades the world. How to achieve this supreme knowledge and free yourself from all agitations and sorrow. People lack this knowledge, being unknown to all mankind. He refers to it as a supreme secret. Those who fail to pursue this knowledge remain bound to the world of mortality. Krishna appeals to seekers to free themselves from this manifest world and reach the unmanifest reality, to discover the divinity that supports the pluralistic phenomena. All living beings and inert things arise from this supreme reality. They exist in the reality. They ultimately merge into the reality. The periods of manifestation of the world and its dissolution run into billions of years. The supreme reality acts as the disinterested self, witnessing entire creation and dissolution.
So it's asking us to get out of this creation dissolution. We all get frightened about doing that because we can only conceive that. But bound by the world of mortality means, what does it mean, just bound by mortality? What does it mean to any of you? What's happening? Good.
It's a cycle of life and death and all things in between. I guess, we are all bound by that.
We're all bound by that. So if you said that to me, I wouldn't be frightened of anything. Let's go, Chilpa, the cycle of birth and death, right? Okay, let's live this life. Oh, maybe I'll come back next time for something else. What is, take it a little bit further. What's happening to you all? And what do you want to, you tell me. I don't want to tell you the answer. What's happening every day? Babita.
We creating our karma every day.
Our karma. Okay.
Yeah, which we take in the next life.
That's true. But what's happening to you generally every day, every one of us?
We're just following the mundane routine of every day. You're getting up, going to work, all the that mundane lifestyle.
It's mundane. So what's mundane mean? Anybody? Renu, did you have something?
I was going to say that we're all getting older and and coming towards the end.
Unfortunately,
Mm.
you don't do anything about it, you get older as well.
Yeah, and it's all temporary.
It's all temporary. But what's the thing which, these are all things that you've picked up from the Gita. Yes, it's temporary, mundane, cycles of life. But what's the issue? The big issue? Nishi.
Our attachment.
Our attachment to the world. What's the issue in that? Some people say attachment's good.
Yeah, it clouds your judgment.
Clouds your judgment. And when things are cloudy, what's the problem with that?
You can't see the truth.
You can't see the truth. And what's the problem with that?
You can't reach that state of single-pointed.
Bring it down to your everyday. Just why are you pursuing this? I'm asking, what's the big idea to pursue something like this?
Find out what it's all about.
Well, that's certainly so. Find out what it's all about. Jyoti.
To grow,
To grow.
for knowledge, to
learn to further yourself.
So to grow, to learn, to further yourself. From what? Okay, it's good. From what? Guru.
I think to be happy from, probably from a sense of freedom, I guess. You still feel that you're somewhere bound. So I think that the sense of freedom probably would give you that happiness. I think we're all probably pursuing that.
So you feel you're bound, you're mundane, so you need to grow. So you don't, if we're attached, we're getting older. So we want to be free, and we don't like stress. We don't like to be full of irritation, stress, all those things which weigh us down. We've got to do something about it. We don't like to be ill. We've got to do something about it. This is taking you out of your mental illness. Swamiji used to say the Vedanta Academy is a mental hospital. It rehabilitates you. You don't need to go there. We need to self-admit ourselves. Anybody else? To the best. And Tim.
After this class, I'm going up to town and I'm worried I may be eaten by a tiger. So I modify my behavior, but I am that tiger, so it shouldn't really worry me at all.
Rise above it. So none of this is complacent. You got to put in your work with your desires to actually refine them, to be able to focus on that truth. Otherwise the desires cloud it and don't allow you to do that. So it takes effort. Good. Let's go to 14.
Satatam kirtayanto ma yatantascha dridha prataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate.
Sam, if you could read the verse. Cute.
Hari Om, good morning. Always glorifying me, striving firm in vows, prostrating before me with devotion, ever steadfast, they worship me.
It's like a prescription. Always glorifying me. So you're firm in your view, your pursuit is constantly on the higher, you're constantly engaging in the higher, striving with that focus, prostrating to me with devotion. So there's a humility in when you pursue the higher, when you gain knowledge. So two things have been covered here, the devotional aspect and the karma aspect. So all your actions when you act are being dedicated to the self. So you're cultivating from that unselfishness to selflessness. So when it's unselfish, it's still something worldly going on in the world, but the selfless value is purely for that evolution to the self, in which you can't be have self-interest, but always looking for the biggest picture of the truth. That's all. It'll fuel you, energize you. So the question you have to be asking yourself is, are you pursuing that karma, but the jnana? In the next verse it's talking about the jnana. So every action of yours must be dedicated prostrating. There's a devotion, there's an acknowledgement of a truth. So you bow down to that in your heart. You don't bow down to anything. You might go to a mandir or a temple, bow down, but it's not meaning just that. It's meaning that's could be superficial. It's meaning from within you. Prostrate yourself. You acknowledge that truth. Your focus is there on that truth, not on the world. But you have desires, so you've got to pursue your karma. As Ramatirtha puts it, the way to gain anything is to lose it. Chordo. Just keep focusing on the truth and do what you have to do. Don't have the expectation of the result, or don't get involved. Be that side. Just do it. What you have to do. Focused on the truth. You must do that karma. You have that devotion, that humility. You have that discrimination and humility in the Bhagavad, Viveka and Vairagya. 2 petals to your learning and practice. In which case, just as a note, we will be starting Bhaja Govindam on an evening time. And perhaps it's going to be a Tuesday. We will check that, but we'll let you know, anybody who wants to attend that shortly in the next week or 2. A beautiful verse, Bhajan by Adi Sankaracharya. This too was elaborated by him, made it easy for us to look at. So, instructions of life, the concepts are all laid out very neatly there. Anybody wants to join, you can do that. So have a firm commitment in your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts in terms of your karma and your bhakti, devotion, and your action. Let's read it.
The choice of words in this verse subtly indicates 2 spiritual disciplines. Karma Yoga, the path of action for the body, and Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion for the mind. In Karma Yoga, the seeker strives hard to reach the self through action. He dedicates his actions to a higher altar, the highest being self-realization. With self-realization as a firm goal, the seeker strives in his field of activity, not polluting his actions with ego and egocentric desires. He dedicates each and every action to the self. This spiritual discipline constitutes the path of action.
So you all got to start to engage in this practice in your everyday karma yoga. Do your activities for something higher, not for your own self-interest, not for your family's interest. It's all sort of pseudo-higher, a little bit away from you. It's got to be, do work. Offer it to something higher. Be unselfish. Not for your own gains. Have a cause. Help yourself evolve. Quieten your mind by doing karma. Don't shun it. Don't run away. If somebody asks you to do karma, no, I've not got the time. I've got other things to do. Which are my commitments? And you're asked to do it. Try and say yes. It will help you enormously. In truth, if it's real karma, a person asking you is not really asking you for them. They're asking you for you. It's a tricky one to understand when there's a world which is with self-interest. Let's go to the next.
In Bhakti Yoga, the devotee glorifies the Lord, surrendering all his feelings to him. His mind remains ever devoted to the Supreme Being, thus rising above his physical, emotional, and intellectual involvement in the world. He follows the path of devotion.
It's a feeling. Not about what is I and mine. Needs to be done. Just do it. It's a feeling. It's a devotional feeling. You go with the whole. What needs to be done? It's not to do with you personally, but there's a good feeling of identification to something bigger. Power of devotion, surrender. In a culture which is individualistic, it's very difficult to surrender even in the mundane fields. It's always I and mine. Establishing I and mine. It's a feeling of doing for somebody else, feeling for something bigger. Engage yourself in something higher so you can cultivate that surrender. It's not blind. You observe it, think about what it's for, but cultivate that grand emotion. Not that I will love you only if you do what I say. It's not that. It's totally the opposite. Let's read a little more. Is everybody with it? Try and digest it. Really helpful. Let's go for more.
Practicing the above spiritual disciplines, the seeker maintains a constant union with the self. Krishna uses me to mean the Supreme Self within you. The word satatam means always, constantly. Spiritual disciplines cannot be casual or occasional. You must practice them most constantly and persistently throughout your day, throughout your life. Only through such practice will you be able to merge ultimately with the Supreme Being. Worship or prayer is not a part-time occupation. It is a full-time awareness of the Supreme.
Just think about how much our occupation is with the world. So ingeniously they created murtis. So wherever our mind goes, you focus on something higher. So the idea of Hinduism isn't polyistic, but it's to focus yourself on the one truth. Because mind goes everywhere. Throughout the day. What might it indicate by being part-time? Guru?
So prayer is not really a chore that you do, that you fix really in your day as a part of the routine, but this has to be a constant awareness throughout.
So what might part-time be? What's commonly known as part-time in what we might imagine. What's he talking about?
It's like temporary, right? I mean, not
Yeah.
all the.
Not all the time, yeah. So give me an example of it. We'll have some example or another.
For me personally, I think it's more like in my daily routine, I probably would have devoted a particular time in the morning for a prayer. And I would say that's probably the only time for me to do a prayer. And then the rest of the time, I don't really have to bother.
That's it, you got it.
That's the way I probably have my gym time. This is my prayer time. This is how I probably. compartmentalized prayer routine. But then I think this verse says that prayer is not just really mere action of bowing down in front of a photo or an idol, but I think beyond that.
Correct. So we've not come to it yet, but in the chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga, it moves from Saguna Upasana, which is worship with an idol, Murti, to Nirguna Upasana, which means no idol is within. It's all the time. So we might utilize some part of our day to prayer, or study, reflect, like we're doing now. 1 hour is in this focus, but it's actually asking us to carry it through. This is just the knowledge we're gaining, or the devotion that we bow down, a reminder of truth, but it's actually asking us to percolate it into our everyday actions, have that refine that emotion in everything you do, identify in a bigger picture, take it within. That if you go within, the self in you is the same self in me. Everything you see is divine. Got to keep that constant reflection and thought being digested in your actions. Everything you do is, you see, you could spend 1 hour in prayer or 1 hour in going to the temple, church, mosque, wherever you go, whatever you do. But that's it. All your activities could be totally, and then you're wondering what's going on. It's got to be, it's your life, how you live your life, how you refine it, how you're going along. It's like looking in the terms of the tree moon branch analogy. You're looking at the bark for 1 hour and thinking, now I got to get to the branch, but you just keep looking at that. You don't move beyond it. So spiritual evolution is constant throughout your life, your day, every day. So you just keep looking at the bark. You'll never get to the moon. You never refine your thoughts or desires. You just keep one compartment. It's not enough, because the amount, that 1 hour that you are nullifying all your negative thoughts, you've got 23 other hours, or whatever time you're awake, bombarding your negative thoughts. So it's got to tip the balance somewhere. Consistency of purpose. Just thought we would look at that. But you've got to start somewhere. So you may start with 1 hour in the morning with your prayer, but don't make it a compartment where it stops. That's got to percolate. It's there as a reminder to percolate through your day, to help you focus on the higher truths. That's Karma Yoga. That's Bhakti Yoga. Jnana. That discrimination. Jnana Yoga. Always thinking on the higher. Always acting with the higher in mind, with that feeling, identification of something universal, the higher, that divinity. Can't be. So you can take up a part-time post if you like, but understand where it's going to take you or not. Let's go. Any questions before we go for 15? Guru.
Well, you just had a basic question. I think on the Bhakti Yoga over here in the commentary, it says Bhakti Yoga is associated with the mind. I wasn't able to really get that. Why would Bhakti Yoga be associated with the mind?
Okay. So Karma Yoga is associated with your physical body. You act, and your mind has desires. It acts on likes and dislikes. It's emotional. It's impulsive. So Bhakti Yoga is when you identify with something higher, It's mind in the sense that the predominance of your feeling is based, we call it mind. But in terms of directing that, you need an intellect. So a true bhakta will have a powerful intellect, and a true jnani will have a powerful strength of emotion. But there's a confluence, but whichever's predominant. So a bhakta has a more powerful mind, more dependent on that feeling, emotion, rather than that discrimination. So the discrimination of a bhakta is something beyond this world. It identifies actually with everything in this world as divine. A jnani posits something beyond this world, opposed to something, everything in it, using subtle intellect. A bhakta uses mind, that feeling, and identifies with the divine backing this world. So sees divinity everywhere. But it's a feeling, emotion. The intellect is a thought where it's discriminatory. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah. So if I understand right, Jnani is a stage beyond Bhakta, is it?
There are different types of predominance. So a jnani will use their thinking capacity to back their emotion. A bhakta will use their emotion to back it. They may fixate themselves on the supreme and identify that everywhere. And jnani needs to understand it more than just emotionally go with it. So it's like, say you listen to some classical music or a bhajan. For some people, the sound of the bhajan, the intonation, it feels good. So they're okay with that. So it's devotional. For another, they need to understand everything in it before they'll go with it. And then it feels good. Yeah. So it's just different paths. Now, one who has many desires may use their mind and intellect. It's generally karma yoga to calm it down. And karma yoga is one who acts. Arjuna was a karma yogi, needed to act. So there's a confluence of the two. So whichever you are predominant in your personality, that's what you need to go with. Not everybody can listen to the Bhagavad Gita or reflect on it like we are. Some people need more of a devotional stance. And you may be more of a thinker that way. You won't be able to sit all day long in bhajans or music. You can't do it. It doesn't hit well with you. You need something to think on, chew on, to understand. So we're all different personalities. We all have these three in us. We all need to utilize karma, bhakti, jnana, but to different degrees, each one of us. So you have to check what your personality is in order to which way you need to go. You know, it's redundant to bring a total bhakta into this sort of classroom. It's just, you won't get anything out of it. Vice versa. But this is helping us, this knowledge is helping us to refine our actions. Most of us need to refine our actions. Makes sense?
Yeah, understood. These seem to be different paths really for a self-realization. They're different ones, right?
Yes. It's helpful to have jnana backing your bhakti and karma though, because it gives you an understanding. Whereas if a bhakta doesn't understand what they're doing, they still can move on it, but they can very easily be manipulated or the rug pulled from them. So it's better to understand and question, think, if you're that way inclined. If not, you have to go with whatever it is. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Tim.
Is the reason that we chant the verse in these classes for the bhakti part of us?
Yes. Yeah. that intonation, even if we don't understand everything which is being said in the Sanskrit, if you do, it's like elating. If not, it's okay. It brings the subtle intellect, tunes us in. It's like an invocation every time. It just brings our mind away from the distraction. It's got a heart to it. And that's the general nature of the scriptures. They bring us in different ways to keep us focused. So yes. There's a little bit of devotion applied rather than cut and dry information. Even when we have examples or a little bit, some jokes, it just oils it, makes it easy. It's emotion, but it's nice.
And the karma part of this class is that we have the discipline to do it at 8 o'clock each Wednesday morning. So the class represents those three elements.
Yeah, in some form, very likely. You don't have the discipline, you don't get the opportunity. It's a little bit more than that in the karma. Yes, you could say that. It's got to extend beyond part-time. That's more than 1 day a week, 1 hour a week, or 1 hour every day. It's got 24 hours. You've got to keep building up what you've got to do. So at 15, let's get to 15.
ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम्.
Renu, if you could read the verse.
Yet others, sacrificing by the yajna, sacrifice of knowledge, worship me as one, as distinct and as manifold, facing all directions.
So this verse, just introducing it, is talking about you sacrifice your ignorance in the fire of knowledge. It's talking about yajna. We've talked about yajna in chapter 4. Offering, something's kindled. It's a form of cooperativeness. So in this verse, it's talking about jnana, yajna. So we won't go further. We'll continue this next week. Okay, welcome back, everybody. And Hari Om.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Hari
you.
Om. Thank
Hari
you.
Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om Vijay. Hari Om Santosh.
Hari Om.
Navinda. Hari Om. Tim.